Thank you for joining us here in the Las Vegas Review Journal studio. I'm Leandre Fox, and joining me, we have Review Journal sports columnist Sam Gordon to talk about the fresh faces on the defensive side of the ball for the Las Vegas Raiders. So let's go ahead and start with probably the biggest defensive signing for the Raiders this offseason. Sam, what can you tell us about edge rusher Chandler Jones and what we could see from him opposite of Max Crosby?
Yeah, Dre. Well, you're talking about one of the most productive pass rushers in the NFL since 2012 when he entered the NFL, drafted by none other than the New England Patriots, right? Double-digit sacks in 7 of the last 9 seasons, had 10.5 last year with Arizona, right? He's a guy that started out as a traditional defensive end, played with his hand in the ground, but has since been deployed as a stand-up pass rusher off the edge in Arizona. And with Patrick Graham coming into the fold, I'd expect Chandler Jones to be in that stand-up role. Once again, I think we're going to see Max Crosby in that role once again as well. But we know that Patrick Graham is going to use versatile fronts. And he's a guy, Chandler Jones, that makes complete sense for what the Raiders want to do. He's still only 32 years of age, 10.5 sacks last season. So you're adding a bona fide pass rusher, somebody that has a track record, proven productivity opposite Max Crosby. I would expect this pass rush to be a little bit more formidable than it was last year when the Raiders paired Unique Ngakoue with Max Crosby. Still a lot of juice on the edge, and Chandler Jones, somebody that is going to be expected to make an immediate difference day one with his play and with his experience.
The Raiders selected a couple of defensive tackles in the draft in Neil Farrell and Matthew Butler, also signing Vernon Butler. Sam, how much of an impact do you see the rookies having this season, and what is the outlook on the D-line unit as a whole?
Yeah, Dre, I think what the Raiders wanted to do here, and I think what made this position so successful for the Raiders last year when we're talking about interior defensive line, was the depth that they were able to build out. Now, of course, Solomon Thomas, Quentin Jefferson chose to sign elsewhere, understandable after the years that they had, and it was about stocking up and continuing to build that depth. They, of course, bring back Jonathan Hankins. They signed Bilal Nichols as well from Chicago. I think what we're going to see, Dre, is a similar kind of thing where it's going to be a rotation with guys that can stuff the run, that can get after the quarterback a little bit. I think the rookies are going to have a chance to be a part of that rotation so long as they come in OTAs and in training camp and show that they can compete at that level and produce. It felt very calculated, very intentional by Dave Ziegler and Josh McDaniels to add depth on the defensive front, considering what they lost. And when you add up what they have as a whole, of course, factoring in cuts and whatnot towards the end of training camp, I think you're going to have enough depth here on the defensive line to piece together, a unit that can stop the run, that can get after the quarterback, and of course that can complement what Max Crosby and Chandler Jones are going to do on the edge. So it's going to look a little different, but I think the philosophy is going to remain the same under the new defensive coaching staff. Depth, rely on depth, rotate a bunch of guys in, keep them fresh, and continue to go from there.
Well, the Silver and Black have brought in a couple of guys in the secondary, trading for cornerback Rock Ya-Sin, adding veteran safety Duron Harmon. They were also interested in signing James Bradberry before he put pen to paper with the Philadelphia Eagles. Sam, do you think they'll need to find another piece, or are they in a pretty good spot as camp approaches in the defensive backfield?
Yeah, Jay, I think you have the luxury of having a few returning players, right? Trayvon Mullen going to be playing it's a big year for him coming off of surgery, but he was really, really solid. What we saw from him last year in his third year, approaching his fourth year, and then Rock Ya-Sin expecting him to start as well. Trevon Merrick was one of the better defensive rookies in the NFL. You have to like what you saw from him if you're a Raiders fan. I think there is some questions at the other safety spot. Jonathan Abram, of course, the new regime declining his contract option, and that puts the onus on him to come out and have a big year. It's a contract year for him. So wonder if we see Tyree Gillespie push him a little bit. I think you're not necessarily as deep as you wanted to be. I think James Bradberry was a guy that would have came in and with the familiarity with Patrick Graham would have started right away. He's a veteran, so I can see the appeal here. I think you're still a little young at this particular spot when you talk about corners and safeties, but there is enough there considering what you return to at least have an idea of what you're going to have in the fall. I think there's going to be some competition from some spots, but don't forget Nate Hobbs, the young corner, was one of the best slot corners in the NFL last year. I think he made the most of his opportunities playing out wide as well. Maybe he competes and pushes for one of those spots out wide, depending on what happens or depending on how everybody looks coming into camp. So, yeah, maybe not quite as much depth as you thought you were going to have, but still I think more than enough at this point in the offseason.
Last one for you, Sam. The linebacker room is almost completely new guys to the Raiders organization. What do you make of that group?
Well, I think it puts the onus on Denzel Perryman and Divine Diablo, the couple guys that have been around, know the program, or at least knew last year's program, and all new program, of course, this year. But Denzel Perryman, Dre, was one of the most productive linebackers in the league last year, and I thought that Diablo came on strong at the end of last season, the former safety out of Virginia Tech, showing range and coverage and also being able to make plays around the line of scrimmage. But I think there's going to be, beyond that, there's a lot of uncertainty. Kyler Fackrell had double-digit sacks a couple years ago with the Green Bay Packers. I think there's some intrigue with him there as a stand-up guy, somebody rushing the passer. Micah Kiser, Luke Masterson, Darian Butler. So it's going to be a new group, right? I think there's going to be a lot of competition here to find out who you have behind those top two guys. But noon isn't necessarily bad just because it's new faces and it's a unit or a group that Raiders fans might not be accustomed to. Doesn't mean there can't be productivity there. Again, like what they have coming back with Perriman and Diablo, and a lot of competition I expect to take place behind those two as OTAs unfold.
Sam, thank you again. For everyone watching, that was Review Journal sports columnist Sam Gordon. For all your Raiders coverage, check out VegasNation.com and be sure to stay tuned as we are expecting new head coach Josh McDaniels and select Raiders players to speak later on this afternoon. For Vegas Nation, I'm Leandre Fox.